Have you always wanted to play a Havoc Demon Hunter, but maybe you find it a little bit too complex or just annoying to play, but you really like it because you're a huge Illidan fan or, just a Fel fan? Then I might have a good guide for you that can help you play the class and the spec in a more relaxing way, but still deal quite a good amount of damage. In this video here, we're going to go through the stats, the talents, the rotation, and then I'm going to end the video with showing you a little gameplay snippet from a dungeon, just to show you kind of how I would play this spec myself. But let's get into it. So when it comes to stats, I always highly recommend getting the highest agility / item level / upgrade level. What I mean by that is, for example, you can see here, I have a build here, which is a veteran item. If I got another build, I would never go down in upgrade level. You can see it says upgrade level veteran. So I would always stay on the same track veteran or go high up, which is champion, hero, and mythic. So basically always go with the upgrade level you are on or higher up, but never go down, because the main stats you get for agility and stamina is such an important factor that you really just want like the highest upgrade level. Then whenever I get an item that is the same upgrade level as the item I already have, for example, if I had these adventure hands and I got another adventure hands, then that is when you want to look at the secondary stats. First of all, we are recommending critical strike. Critical strike is fun because it's usually a stat that is not like the most recommended for many specs, but for Demon Hunters we do have, like Havoc Demon Hunters, we do have some talents which kind of helps making it a little bit more popular. We, for example, have the talent here called Know Your Enemy. Gain critical strike damage equal to 80% of your critical strike chance. So now the more critical strike you have, the more percentage-wise your critical strikes are going to deal more damage. So more crit now means, of course, that every time the more crit you have, the bigger chance, of course, you have to do critical strike. So, every time you attack, based on your critical strike, you have a chance to do like double damage. But now, with this talent here, the more crit you have, the more crit damage you also do. So, gain critical strike damage equal to 80% of your critical strike chance. So, again, the more crit you have, the more crit damage you do, which is basically making crit so valuable. Also, of course, the passive of crit itself, giving all your attacks double chance to do, deal higher chance to deal double damage, is, of course, also really, really good. We also have this one here, which is quite interesting. So each time Immolation Aura deals damage, 35% of that damage dealt by up to 3 critical strikes is gathered as Rage Fire. So when you actually have Immolation Aura and it deals damage, 35% of that damage dealt up to 3 critical strikes is gathered as Rage Fire. So, the crits that comes out of it is going to get saved, and when Immolation Aura expires, you explode, and dealing all the stored Rage Fire damage to nearby enemies. So again, another thing that basically helps us, justifying why a critical strike is great. So again, critical strike, great thing, like it's something you should really try. Whenever you get like an item that has the same upgrade level, it's not a bad thing to getting critical strike. Secondly, we have Mastery. So Mastery is increasing all your chaos damage. So that most of our spells, like almost like all of them, but some are not. Most of our spells are dealing chaos damage. So Mastery, what it does is it increases your chaos damage you deal, but also it increases your movement speed if you have talented into Pursuit, which in my builds we have. So both now Mastery is going to increase your movement speed, which is great for like dungeons and raids, especially raids, but it also increases basically all your damage. So overall, a great stat. Then we have Haste. Haste increases your attack speed of your auto attacks. It also reduces the global cooldown. And when we use single button assistant, we are getting punished in our global cooldown. But with more haste, it actually reduces the global cooldown. So it's less punishing, which is quite nice. Also, haste reduces the cooldown on all your spells that has a green icon. So for example, here you can see Frogglaive 8-second charge. Because it's green, it means that haste is actually reducing the cooldown of this spell here. The same with Immolation Aura, the same with Blade Dance. So like all the spells that you can find that has like a green cooldown is reduced in cooldown based on haste as well. So haste again, increase attack speed, increases helping, like increase attack speed, reduces global cooldown, reduces the cooldown on our spells, and basically helps you to get more fury or more energy because we're attacking faster and casting spells faster. So again, also a great thing. Haste is like also just all great for single button assistant. You could prioritize it over like crit and mastery, but on paper, crit and mastery is just dealing more damage overall. So again, it's like it's a good mix, like, you know, yeah. Worst of all is versatility. Versatility is not like a bad thing. Don't get like scared of it. It just increases all your damage you deal. Like, you know, if you have 12% versatility, then you're going to deal 12% more damage and heal 12% more. And you're going to, half of that is also getting reduced of the damage you take yourself. So you're going to be more tanky and you're going to deal more damage. It's a great stat if you like do a lot of like PvP or solo gameplay. Basically all the PvP gear you buy has it on it, usually. That was the case in the war in. But it's also a great stat having, like, if you do a lot of solo content, like solo delves or stuff like that. Just overall, it's a fine stat, but yeah. But this is still the priority of the stats if you really want to like min-max the damage for a Havoc Demon Hunter. So when it comes to talents, I am leaning very much into the meta. Right now, Fellsguard, as you can see here, we have here in the middle, Fellsguard is just at the meta supreme right now. I haven't really found anyone who's using Eldrake Reaver. Maybe some out there is of course using it, but for all the meta sites, I found Fellsguard is just like the Omega right now. Both by raid build and dungeon build is very, very meta inspired. Probably some of the meta sides is the same, but that is because these builds are basically the ones that deals the most damage. I have tested them. I have really, you know, tested them in dungeons and different scenarios to see if they worked or if something has to be changed. And I must say, the meta builds, they just work really well with Havoc Demon Hunter and the single button system. So we are leaning way more, like a lot more on this build here into the meta builds. So these builds are very close to the meta builds and probably maybe the same, but you know, still, just letting you know, we are using meta builds for the Havoc Demon Hunter since those already deal insane amount of damage, and single button assistant was originally made for like dealing a lot of damage. So, you know, it makes sense. But when I make my tank builds and I make my healer builds, then it's very customized builds. But when it comes to the DPS builds, we are very much using the meta builds since they already pretty much deal the most damage. So don't be surprised if you then try to take my build and, you know, one of the meta builds, because they probably is going to be very much the same. In this build here, we both have a raid build and a dungeon build. Both these builds is on my Discord. So if you go to the link in the description and you go to the Discord server, there's going to be a room called Havoc Demon Hunter. And in there's going to be an export string for both the dungeon build and the raid build in case you want it. You can, of course, also just take a screenshot of it and, you know, basically put it over. But the main bit difference between the raid build and the dungeon build is basically the raid build is more, it's highly like a single target build focused on using actually quite a lot of rogue glaive, and the dungeon build is a bit more like an AoE build, using these out. So you can basically see here in the raid build we're using this line here in the middle here, which you can see is transferring, and in the dungeon build we're using these out here. So the main difference, for example, is the dungeon build is using immolation aura increases, immolation aura damage increases by 10% each time it deals damage. So more AoE damage, which makes sense in a dungeon. Also, Demon Blade and Throw Glaive leave open wounds on your enemies, dealing 2700 chaos damage over 15 seconds, and increase the damage taken from immolation aura. Again, we are using this one here, so we deal more damage with immolation aura. And also we have this one here, Ragefire, which we talked about, why it's great. We talked about this one in the stats section, but when you do immolation aura damage and it crits, it stores it and explodes after that. We are also using Glaive Tempest, which is a really cool talent, because after you have finished Blade Dance, and if you strike more than 3 targets, well, 3 or more targets, it will basically summon 2 weapons that spins around and deal a lot of damage, which is amazing. So that is the highlight key points between the raid build and the dungeon build, is that we have this to make even more damage from immolation aura, and also to make some extra AoE damage. But then we have the raid build here, which is way more focused on dealing damage with Throw Glaive and some bleeding damage. For example, Throw Glaive deals 60% increased damage, reduced by 30% for each previous hit. So it just deals more damage, and so on. Throw Glaive now costs 25 Fury and throw a second glaive at the target. So now it just don't only cast one glaive, it actually casts 2 glaives at the target, which of course is nice, even more damage, because we have a lot of increased damage from Throw Glaive up here. Also, the final slash of Blade Dance deals additionally 50% more damage, and enemies hit by Chaos Strike or Throw Glaive take 50% increased damage from Chaos Strike and Throw Glaive for 15 seconds. Even more damage. And then, this one here, I love it. Throw Glaive causes targets to take an additionally 80% damage as chaos damage over 6 seconds. So basically this build here, with the raid build, the single target build, is using a lot of Throw Glaive to deal even more damage. So that is like the highlight key of the raid build, that this is what we have taken here instead of the AoE from here. But both the builds are very much using all the same talents down in the bottom. So for example, what we have is of course Know Your Enemy, which is going to make all your crit deal more crit damage, which is nice. We also have activating Eye Beam reduces the cooldown of your next Eye Beam by 2.5 seconds up to 10 seconds, so very nice. This one here, I love this one here. This one here is the most RNG talent ever, but it can be so goddamn fun. Your chaos damage has a 7.77% chance to be increased by 70% or curing up to 7 times. So imagine, when you do chaos damage, the game, every time you do chaos damage, it rolls a dice, and there's a 7% chance that it will deal 17% more damage. And every time it rolls yes, you need to do 17% more damage, it rolls again, and it rolls again, and can do it all the way up to 7 times. So technically, if I put out my calculator here, technically you can actually have, risk that your spell is going to deal 119% more damage if it rolls correctly all 7 times, which is crazy. And this behind the scenes is happening every single time you do the chaos damage. So yes, so when you see your damage spell, sometimes they deal 100 damage, sometimes they deal 220 because of this talent here. It's sick, but it's also so RNG, but it's fun. We also have this one here. Immolation Aura has 1 additional charge, has 6-second reduced cooldown, and deals chaos damage instead of fire. We like that because now this one here also affects by this one here, so it can deal way more damage. And also our Mastery increases chaos damage, so now Mastery also makes Immolation Aura even stronger. Also, it allows you can have multiple Immolation Aura active at the same time, which means you can technically have 2 Immolation Aura active at the same time, dealing damage at the same time. Yeah. Then we also have Blade Dance automatically triggers Throw Glaive on your primary target for 100% of the damage. Each slash has 50% chance to throw Glaive at an enemy for 35% of the damage. So just damage, and whenever you use one of these spells, they just like keep throwing other spells out. It's just like, as the name is, Screaming Brutality is just a lot of direct spells that triggers more spells, which is quite cool. But then we also have in this build here the Apex talents. Of course, we're using that for both the raid build and dungeon build. This one here is insane. The Hunt, so if you haven't noticed, the Hunt has become a very primary spell of the Havoc Demon Hunter build, which kind of makes sense because it's kind of like, you know, something from Illidan, right? So, and if you don't know the Hunt, it's basically a spell where you charge to a target, deals a lot of damage, and then you also deal a lot of damage over time to that target. It's kind of like, you know, you're hunting down someone and deal a lot of damage to them and over time. Great spell. But this one down here empowers it. The Hunt empowers your next Eye Beam, increasing its damage by 100% and affecting enemies in a wider area. 100% more damage for Eye Beam from the Hunt. Insane. Also, the Hunt has a 30-second reduced cooldown, deals 30% more damage, and its damage over time effect applies to 4 additional enemies. Boom. So now when you use the Hunt into a big group of mobs, all of them is going to get that like damage over time on plus, you know, the target plus 4 enemies, which is insane. Lastly, Blade Dance increased by 20% damage, and a fully challenged Eye Beam causes your next Blade Dance to refresh its own cooldown. So now, right after you use your Eye Beam fully, Blade Dance, whatever cooldown they're on, it's just going to reset. It just makes the entire rotation so much more fun. Everything else we have up there is like passives, not too important to talk about, except of course this one here. Because if I didn't explain this one here, you would be like, why is this happening? I-beam calls you to enter demon form for 5 seconds after it finishes. So basically, whenever you use I-beam, you're gonna go into your demon form every 5 seconds, which is insane. But then, that of course is the one we have here on the right side, and the difference. I just wanted to let you know the difference between raid and dungeon. The dungeon build, of course, is a lot of great AoE damage from Immolation Aura, and then the raid build is of course very great single target damage from all these in the middle here, especially with throw glaives and the extra bleeding damage and blah 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 blah. The middle here, Fellsguard, pretty much stays the same. The only thing we change is we're using Studden of Suffering for the raid build, and we're using Flamebound for the dungeon build, since it increases the Immolation Aura again. But beside of that, in the left side here, I don't want to talk about the left side too much, because it's pretty much the same. Even if you play Vengeance Demon Hunter, if you play Devour, you pretty much use all the same things over here. Like it's very like casually over here. But here we get healed by fire damage we deal. Here we have a stun. Here we have an interruption. Well, increases the range of interruption. In the raid build, we are actually removing some bonuses from the stun and also the interruption, because we don't really need the stun, like bonus from the stun and interruptions there. And then we actually focusing more on, as you can see here, like speed, like what's it called? Speed, or movement speed after using Fell Rush, and also a lower cooldown on Fell Rush. Because in raids, you kind of want to have more like what is called more mobility, where in dungeons it's nice that you actually get rewarded from interrupting a spell, and also you want to have like more stun in a dungeon. But everything else in here is pretty much the same as the other Devour builds we have. We always, of course, have Soul Rending, because it gives us 10% more leech. So 10% of all the damage you do is getting healed back to you. And whenever you go into Metamorphosis, which is your demon form, it's going to increase up to 20%. And because of this one over here, we enter demon form quite often, which is going to keep giving you 20% leech, which is insane. We also have this one here. Every time you use Fell Rush, you're going to go into you're going to get a shield. Fell Rush has 2 charges, only cooldown on 10 seconds. And it's going to give you a shield of 6% of your health, which is going to slowly go down. So, yeah, overall, great build, fun. It's I'm really happy playing this one here. I feel like it works so well. The raid build and the dungeon build. But yeah, that's the talents. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. And again, the talents can be found over on my Discord server. So when it comes to rotation, it's actually quite simple. You can see this is the spells you're going to have down here. And to start talking about the rotation, I use a macro. So I have made a macro here. You can see again, this macro is also on my Discord. But here you can see we are saying no channeling I-beam, no channeling abyssal gaze, single button assistant. What this means is that when you use the spell either I-beam or the upgraded version Abyssal Gaze, then if you keep spamming single button assistant, it will actually interrupt your I-beam or Abyssal Gaze, and it will not finish 100% because the single button assistant will just interrupt it. And it's very important we get like the fully charged I-beams because of our talents bonuses we have. So that's why I'm using this macro here. And this basically macro text here that we have here is making sure that it will not interrupt it whenever we cast these 2 spells. You cannot interrupt it with this macro here. If you have a very bad latency, like you play from a different region from the server you play on, these macros can actually be a little bit it can make your game lag even more using them. So if you have like a good latency, like I have here, like only 17, then you can use this macro freely and no problem. But if you have like a very bad latency, it can cause some issues. So just know, like if it happens, then use the normal single button assistant button, but then you just have to stop pressing when it actually uses I-beam or Abyssal Gaze. Alright, rotation wise, we of course have the single button assistant we're using for this build here, this spec here. It is using Blade Dance, Chaos Strike, I-beam, Immolation Aura, and Throw Glaive. It's just going to throw them all out randomly, but it is still trying to like make it nice, you know, with throwing Immolation Aura, then throwing a Blade Dance, and I-beam, Chaos Strike. It's kind of trying to do it nice, but you can of course help it. So if you want to do like a min-maxing damage, what I would suggest is that you're going to start with the Hunt. The Hunt is going to be your main spell that you're going to use. So how it will look like is you're going to be, you know, we have the group there, the tank has pulled, and now we're going to start. So we're going to be using the Hunt, and then we're going to be spamming 1. what you can see now is it used Hunt, it used Throw Glaive, Immolation Aura, Eye Beam, and now it used Throw Glaive, and it used, like, it just keeps going through your rotation. Then, what after this one, after it actually has used Eye Beam, and you can see there's a cooldown, now you could go into your Metamorphosis, and it's going to reset the cooldown of Eye Beam, which is now going to called Abyssal Gaze. So don't use Metamorphosis on the start. You want to use Eye Beam always before you go into Metamorphosis, because it's going to reset the cooldown on Eye Beam. I hope you kind of get that. So the first thing is you would use the Hunt, then you would be spamming 1 until it uses Eye Beam. Then straight after the Eye Beam, you can then use your Metamorphosis, and then it will use Eye Beam one more time. Pretty nice. And I mean, pretty simple, right? So you spam 1, you use the Hunt, you spam 1 until it has used Eye Beam. So just keep going with the rotation until it used Eye Beam. Then you use Metamorphosis, and then you kind of like repeat, 2 whenever it's ready in combat again, spam 1 until it uses Eye Beam, then Metamorphosis, and that's pretty much your rotation. Quite simple, right? And you're going to deal great damage and self-healing as well. So 2 for pull, and whenever it's off cooldown, because that's a spell you want to use all the time. Spam 1 whenever you're doing normal rotation, and use your Metamorphosis right after Eye Beam to basically reset the cooldown, which is pretty cool. Then, now I'm going to challenge you. If you really want to min-max with the single button assistant, we have this talent here called Inertia. If you want to have a little harder time, but feel like you're doing a little bit more damage, then you should play with this talent here. But if you want to have a really easy time, you should probably get rid of this talent here and pick something like over here, anything here. You could take like more damage from Throw Glaive, or it casts a second Throw Glaive. Anything over here is like possible to take. But let me try explain what this one here is. The Hunt and Vengeful Retreat causes your next Fell Rush or Fell Blade to empower you, increasing all the damage you do by 18%, which is insane. So how you play this is every time you use the Hunt, every time you use Vengeful Retreat, then next time you either use Fell Rush or Fell Blade, it's gonna deal it's going to increase all your damage, but for 5 seconds, for 18 seconds. Let me show you how that would look like. So for example, now we're going to be using the Hunt on the pull. We're going to be spamming 1, but we're also going to be using Fell Rush. And now Fell Rush increases all the damage we deal by 18%. And you saw it actually used Eye Beam inside that 18% more damage. So now my Eye Beam actually dealt 18% more damage. Then you would be using your Metamorphosis, and now you know that it's going to be casting Abyssal Gaze soon, which is your Eye Beam inside Metamorphosis. So what you're going to do now is you're going to use Vengeful Retreat, very quickly Fell Rush, and you're going to be spamming 1 again very quickly, because then all the damage you're going to deal now for the next 5 seconds is also increased by 18 seconds. But this is more skill capping, like this is harder to play, because now you know every time it's about to use Eye Beam, you want to use, because technically you need to use the Hunt or Vengeful Retreat before you can do this bonus, like this damage bonus here. But it requires way more from you, because now you need, right after using the Hunt, you can of course spam it a little bit 1, and when it's ready to use Eye Beam, use your Fell Rush, and now Eye Beam deals 80% more damage. Then you go into Metamorphosis, then you use Vengeful Retreat, and you use Fell Rush again, and now you're going to do 18% more damage again. I hope you're seeing what I mean here. But again, so it's going to increase the damage by your Eye Beam and your Fell Gaze, or whatever it's called, by 80%, which is a lot. Like, it's a lot of damage increase. But it also is so much harder for you. Like, it's going to make it a little bit more harder for you, because you now need to remember to use your Fell Rush and also Vengeful Retreat together with this rotation here. Again, if you feel like, wow, okay, no, I don't want that, no worries, remove it, pick any talent here. Maybe, I think in my case here, I would probably take the one up here where Throw Glaive deals 60% more damage, or it throws a second one, but then it also costs Fury. I'm not really sure if that's worth it. Or you could take anything over here that you feel like sound nice. It's up to you. But again, this one here is definitely everyone plays with it who wants to deal most damage. But it also just, it requires a little bit more from you. So again, So that's pretty much the rotation. Hunt, keep spamming one until you have your fill. You could say eye beam is ready. Then we could use fill rush to get that 80% more damage. Basically that. There we go. Go into metamorphosis. Now, whenever it's ready to use that eye beam again, we can see down here. Okay, now then, you know, boom. Oh, sorry, we have to use Vengeful Retreat, Fill Rush, and then basically spam one again. And again, the rotation is way simpler if you don't want to follow this talent here, Inertia, and you don't care about 80% damage, and you're going to pick some of the other talents over here. Then it's way simpler to play, because then you just use the Hunt, you get close to it, you spam one. After it has used Eye Beam, you use Metamorphosis, and then you spam one. That's it. Then it's way simpler to play. But if you want to have like a little bit more challenging and deal 80% more damage when you have Laser Beam, then you got to use, you know, Fell Rush after Hunt, and you also got to use Vengeful Retreat in your rotation, and use Fell Rush to get back. Remember, you can also use Fell Blade. Fell Blade actually deals more damage. I mean, Fell Blade deals 3 to 4k damage, which is of course also great. So you could of course also, you know, move around these two spells and use Fell Blade instead. That could actually also work. So it will look something like this. So you know you are using here, using Vengeful Retreats, quickly using Fell Blade, and look at that. You very quickly jumped away, you very quickly jump back, and now you deal 80% more damage for 5 seconds. I know it requires more from you, but it's up to you if you want to play with that one. That's basically the rotation. Beside of that, we of course have Fell Rush. It's a nice spell to get around. It deals almost 2k damage. Then we have your interrupt spell, Disrupt. If the target is casting a spell that it should not be cast, you know, something that's going to hurt some of your party members, then you could use Disrupt and you're interrupting them. Pretty nice. Then we also have Fell Blade. It's a nice spell of like catching up to enemies, kind of like a charge spell. It deals 4k damage, and you might be thinking, shouldn't we use that in our normal rotation? Well, for example, Chaos Strike deals 6,000 damage. Demon Blades here, which is your auto attack, deals 1,000 damage. Frogglaive 1,000 damage. Blade Dance 16,000. And so you can see all the damage spells that you're basically using global cooldown on deals more damage than Fell Blade. You could use it. I mean, it's not any harmful to use it, but technically you don't have to use it as for like a damage rotation. It's you can, like, don't get me wrong, you can, like, it's fine to use. You could definitely put it like down here to 2 and, you know, use it inside your damage rotation. You don't have to, but it's up to you if you want to use it. But still, I mean, it's still like 4k free damage. Doesn't cost anything, and yeah, so I mean, why not? You could do it, but it's kind of up to you if you want to like try fit it into your rotation. Beside of that, we have Consume Magic. You can remove a beneficial spell from your enemy. So for example, if they have a healing on them, a shield or something like that, then you can remove that. Darkness is a spell when you stand inside it. There's a 15 to 25% chance that you are going to avoid all the attacks you take. Quite nice and handy if you take a lot of damage. Then we have Blur. We have 2 charges of Blur because of this talent here. And Blur reduces all the damage you take by 35%. So every time you use it, boom, then for 10 seconds, I now take 35% less damage, which is quite handy. Especially if you know the boss is about to do a big damage spell, then it helps your healer. Spectral Side, in case you're going to find something in stealth. Vengeful Retreat, just push you back. And of course, it has a synergy with this talent here. Then we have Sigil of Misery. Imagine these 3 mobs were casting all a very strong fireball, something in our tank. Then I could use Sigil of Misery, and it will fear them all and stop them for casting. It's like a mass interrupt. We also have Chaos Nova here, which is a spell that basically just interrupts them all. Like it stuns them all for 3 seconds. So boom, stuns them all. So we have 2 spells where we can mass interrupt enemies if they're casting spells, and 1 for single target interrupt, which is Disrupt. We also have Imprison, where you're basically throwing an enemy into a prison for 1 minute, but it only works on Humanoid, Beast, and Demons. It could be a fine spell, but not yet. But again, I hope the rotation makes sense. We're spamming 1 with a single button assistant. After Eye Beam, you're using, so basically you start with the Hunt, you keep spamming 1 until it uses Eye Beam, and right after Eye Beam, you want to use Metamorphosis, since it's going to reset the cooldown on your Eye Beam, and then that's basically it. And then of course you have your Fell Blade, which you're more than welcome to use. If you're using this talent here, Inertia, then of course it makes sense also to maybe move these around. because Fellblade still deals like 3 to 4k damage, which is still great, and it has the synergy with this talent here. So then in that way you can also keep using it. So yeah, plenty of ways for you to modify this and how you want to play it, but still simple rotation and fun. Let's try a dungeon, and I will show you how I would probably play this in a dungeon. Alright, so let's test the rotation on a boss here. So now we have Task right here. Of course, if I wanted to do most damage on him, I would have to be in my raid build, but you don't really have the time between switching between raid builds and dungeon builds. So we're just going to do the dungeon build here. But again, how I would start is I would start with the Hunt, then spamming 1 until it uses I-Beam. After I-Beam, we're going to be using Metamorphosis. And again, if we play with this talent here, which is going to increase our damage by 18, we're going to see if we can keep doing that right before I-Beam. I know when you play with this macro here, it's not going to tell you when your I-Beam is going to be used. That's why I have the normal single button build here, to tell me when it's going to be using it. But let's try it. Are you ready, tank? Spamming 1. Now it of course use I-Beam right before. We're going to go into Metamorphosis to get that I-Beam back again. And there we go. So now we use double I-Beam because we used it before, and we're going to use Blur now to reduce the damage taken by 35%, since I know it's going to deal damage to us. Should probably also get away from here. There we go. Use Vengeful Retreat and Fell Rush. I actually managed to fail using this one here correctly, so maybe even I should not play with this one here, since it can make it a little bit more harder to play it. But technically, after you use the Hunt, you need to use either Fell Blade or Fell Rush, and you can also use Vengeful Retreat, and then Fell Blade, and it's going to increase your damage by 18. So technically, you could just, every time Vengeful Retreat is ready to be used, you could be using it. Now we could be using the Hunt, then use Fell Blade, and now it's going to increase all the damage by 18% again. Right in time for our I-Beam. Now we're going to use Vengeful Retreat, Fell Blade, and all damage again increased by 80%. It's some extra things to think about, if you know what I mean. Like yeah. Either you can play the easy module where you just have 1, 2, 3, or you can also play with this talent here, which is going to do quite a lot of more damage, but it requires more from you. But if it ends up making you play the spec worse, then again, I would not recommend this one here, and pick something else to have an easier time. Just I want to really state that. But overall, I mean, it works pretty well. Hunt, spam 1 until you use I-Beam, Metamorphosis, spam I-Beam again, and you just go. And you have all your defensives and so on, Works great. Quite fun. So yeah. So thanks for watching this guide here. Again, keep in mind I am making single button guides for all different specs, tank, healers, and damage dealers. We have now done all the Demon Hunter videos, so that means I'm going to start on the next class now. I'm still thinking about which one I'm going to be leveling up next, because I need to level up all the different classes to level 90, and then I can make guides about them. So still thinking about who should be the next one here. But really appreciate you all for the support. I'm so glad to see so many people is enjoying these single button guides, so thank you so much for the support. If you want to support even further, feel free to subscribe to the channel. You will also get notified when a new video is out, or even become a YouTube member if you want to have a little cool, like a logo next to your name when you do comments or write in the chat and get behind the scene footage. And also your name is going to be in the end of the video. So yeah, thanks again for the support, and I'll see you in the next single button guide. And remember, all my talents and UI, macros and everything is on my Discord, link in the description. Peace out.